So, I'm an addict when it comes to hero shooters like Overwatch or Gundam Evolution, RIP. The latter shut down after a year, and Overwatch has been slowly killing itself for years. The final nail in the coffin was their sad excuse for a sequel that finally made me go clean. You might have guessed what happened next. Yeah, Marvel Rivals came out and I relapsed. Back when I played Overwatch, I often wondered, what if X franchise, but as a hero shooter? And now we have our answer for Marvel, which has brought the question bubbling back to the surface. And I started thinking about, well, what if Dragon Ball had its own hero shooter? I've gone through and planned how this hypothetical game might look, and what I think a starting roster would be. This took a lot of work, and covering 24 characters will take a while, so I think I'll split this into multiple videos to space it out a little. We'll start with the basic mechanics and how a game like this might function, and then cover a few characters to help paint the picture. A lot of those basic mechanics will be what you expect from the genre. It's kind of the point of doing this. What if Dragon Ball, but this game genre, right? Characters will have abilities, the abilities have cooldowns, and the characters are divided into 3 classes: tank, damage, and support. Each character has an ultimate ability, something we've come to expect of hero shooters and Dragon Ball games as a whole. But there are also some very Dragon Ball things added to change up that expected formula. First would be the ability for characters to fly. This was a problem when I tried planning out gameplay because flying characters like Vara or Iron Man are either a menace or absolutely useless in these kinds of games. Support mains, you know what I mean. If you're stuck with a useless damage that can't shoot them out of the friggin' sky, our backline is just getting gunned down, or we're fending for ourselves and being yelled at for not healing the rest of the team. At time of writing, Johnny Storm just came out, and his and Storm's combo is the most annoying thing in the game. Seriously, why do I have 2 melee DPS against flying characters? Sorry, got distracted. I decided the game wouldn't be fun if everyone could fly in perpetuity, so my solution is that most characters can fly, but they all have a flight gauge they need to manage so they can't constantly be in the air. It's Dragon Ball, so flying needs to be in here, but it'll be hiffle to balance. Another Dragon Ball touch is that each character has 2 basic attacks. One that is a melee combo, and another which is a ki blast. This is something I'll get into more with the characters, since each will have something unique to them. But doing this creates an unofficial subdivision between ranged and melee characters, or ki blasters and fighters, depending on what each character excels at. Some will be on the extreme end, where either their ki blast or melee is useless, and others who are something of a balance between the 2 styles, just leaning in one direction or the other. There is also a ki gauge, of course, to go with using ki blasts. There are different sizes of ki gauges for different characters, and then there are the outliers like Android 18, who would have an infinite ki gauge, or Hercule, who has none at all. One issue that could come up with how I've planned out the game is that there's a lot to keep track of. There's the usual, health bar and ability cooldowns, but then there's also ki gauges and flight gauges as well. Add on top of that the chaotic nature of team battles and people just flying through the air, and things get a little overwhelming. I also planned out a control scheme for keyboard and Xbox controllers. Honestly, it probably would have been better if I just used the control scheme for Xenoverse. It would have given access to more abilities to make for an even more chaotic game, but I stuck too close to the hero shooter expectation and modeled it after Overwatch's controls. The question for a Dragon Ball hero shooter is, just how chaotic should it be? Should it be toned down to better fit the genre and gameplay of hero shooters? Or should we lean into the transformations and massive attacks of the series? The way I see it, there are 2 ways a Dragon Ball hero shooter could be made. The first is sticking more strictly to what's expected of the genre. Overwatch, but with Goku and Vegeta painted over top. While this route could still be fun and certainly easier to plan, it would cut out the draw to making this a Dragon Ball game by making it one in name only. The other path would be to move away from the genre's conventions to make a chaotic game fully embracing Dragon Ball's absurdity, characters flying around the map and spamming ki blasts or getting into close quarters combat. I'm aiming to land somewhere in the middle with this thought experiment. The former would be pointless, while the latter would end up as a different game than what I'm trying to imagine here. If we tried to make a hero shooter and go full Dragon Ball with it, we'd have Xenoverse 2.5, but with different map designs, objective-based missions, and no creative character. I mean, I would still play that. Now, for how it might play, the usual main modes are either a King of the Hill or Push the Payload, which will be in here because it's expected, but I wanted to add something, again uniquely Dragon Ball. So the first main game mode will be Dragon Ball Hunt. It's sort of a capture the flag game, except there are 7 flags randomly scattered across the map. Each team will have a spawn and a nearby base. The goal of the game is to find and collect the 7 Dragon Balls hidden on the map before the timer runs out. A Dragon Ball only counts as being collected if it's inside your team's base. Enemies can sneak into your base and try to steal a Dragon Ball you've already collected. Once one team has all 7 Dragon Balls, the game ends and they win. If the timer runs out, the team who has the most Dragon Balls wins. If the 2 teams have an even number collected, then the game goes into overtime. The first team to successfully collect a Dragon Ball or remove one from the enemy's base wins. For this game mode, I imagine the maps would be Planet Namek, Gizzard Wasteland, from where Goku and Vegeta first fought, or Natade Village from Broly's Second Coming. The King of the Hill mode would be called Invasion, and framed as one side trying to protect the landing spot for an invading force, such as Frieza's army. The other side would be trying to take control of the landing spot so they can shoot down the attacking ship. You know what this mode is, fight for control of an area of the map to win. The maps would be the peninsula from Resurrection F, and the city from the Super 17 arc of GT. I kinda like the idea of a giant hippo portal just hovering over the map. The last main mode would be Escort, or Push the Payload. Again, you know how this works. I imagine the framing for the mission would be something like needing to escort Bulma to her lab in West City, which would be the first map, or escorting some stolen energy to Babdi's lair. I'm not sure if that map would be going from the World Tournament Arena to Babdi's ship, or if it would actually be the inside of his ship, but the end result would be the same. Majin Buu's cocoon dying, or getting the energy and being revived. Map design is far from my forte, but I know they would be especially difficult to plan for this game. Hero shooters tend to have a lot of choke points, or narrow passageways that lead to more open areas. That way defenders have specific points where they have the advantage and can stop the enemy push, while the attackers would have the advantage pushing through more open areas. Doing that in a game where just about every character can fly seems like no simple task. My solution is a rule of 3s. Each area would have 3 heights at which characters can move about. Ground level, high ground, and then a flight area. To limit the flight area and make sure players don't just fly around the choke points, I'm picturing a bunch of floating rocks, like a Star Wars asteroid belt, to block off the areas. To explain this, I would just blame Fu. Honestly, that's how I'd explain the entire game. Weird things are happening cause Fu did another experiment. Simple. But yeah, the main pathway would be at ground level. There would be a high ground path to the sides, and then the flight zone above everything else, with floating debris that blocks off otherwise game-breaking pathways. Additionally, I would include the breakable walls mechanic from Marvel Rivals. Dragon Ball fights are so destructive, it just wouldn't be right without it. A special feature of breaking the terrain could be weaponizing how the debris falls, like in Gizzard Wasteland. Knock over one of the rock pillars to drop it on an enemy, and block part of the path. That's really all the ideas I have map-wise. So, on to the fun bit, the characters. I planned out a starting roster of 24 characters, 6 tanks, 6 supports, and 12 damage. Overwatch started with 21 characters, and Marvel Rivals started with 33. So I think 24 is a reasonable number for me to pick. Plus, 6, 6, and 12 just feels like a good balance. When picking characters, I wanted to try and represent something from every era of Dragon Ball. For that wide appeal I think Bandai would want if they actually made this game. You know, trying to be realistic to what I think the cast would actually look like. I put this together before watching Daima though, so I couldn't include anything for the newest series. Honestly, I think Bandai could make this easily if they actually wanted to. They already make so many Dragon Ball games, so they must have a library of character models and animations and map textures to pull from. Anyways, I'll only cover 2 of the tanks, 2 of the supports, and 2 of the damages that I planned out for today. But first, I should quickly mention one last feature to the game to help make it feel a little more filled out. I wanted to include assist characters because Toriyama loved making his side characters. That's why Dragon Ball has always had such a large cast. Assist characters would be easier to make than playable characters, but it's still a way to get a little more rep into the game. They'd function like an assist in a fighting game, and be an extra ability to tack onto your character before the game starts. Another way to think of them would be like relics in Smite, a strong ability with a very long cooldown. While I think these are a good way to fill out the roster, to let fans see a few extra characters, they do pose a slight balancing issue. You see, characters can only have up to 4 abilities, but it's really only 3. If they have a 4th, it's just a way to switch between attack styles, like switching weapons. I figure the assists would either be an additional ability anyone can have, or I'd limit characters to 3 abilities, not counting the switch ability. So if you had a character with a lot of abilities, you would have to trade out one of them if you wanted to use an assist. I picked 12 characters to be assists, and these also help me include some early Dragon Ball reps like Par and Oolong, who both make a type of goofy looking decoy shield. Then there's Chaozu, who has a short range psychic stun. Tambourine circles an area and automatically attacks enemies in it, and Symbol will do a body drop on an area for massive damage. Moving to Z, we have King Kai, who provides infrared sight to the player temporarily. Kui shouts, "Look, Lord Frieza!" before firing a Ki Blast. Jason Birder used the purple Comet Crash. Android 19 shields the player from a Ki-based attack by absorbing it. Bujin will set a Psycho Thread trap. Yamu will steal an enemy's Ki and give it to you. And lastly, Kibito Kai will teleport the player to the top of the map and then teleport them back down to a nearby point of their choosing. Okay, characters. Obviously we'll start with Goku from Z. I decided to make him a tank, something anyone should be able to pick up, but which can still be useful at high rank. If Dokkan Battle and SH Figuarts has taught me anything, it's that Bandai likes pushing Goku, so they'd want to make him something you'd always see. Goku has high health and a medium ki gauge. His melee is a longer combo that if you hit every attack, it'll do above average damage. The real strength to it is its ability to deflect weaker ki blasts. If you use the melee while no enemy is in range, Goku will deflect the ki blast. This gives him a defensive option and can help goad enemies into a melee attack. Since there has been Dragon Ball media over the course of decades, I won't bother with the specific attacks in the combo, just their length and damage. You can reference any fight or game you want for the actual movements. I'd be tempted to pull from the Grandpa Gohan fight after Super's reference at Baba's Palace. I imagine that the length of a combo could be a way of balancing characters. Like I said, Goku can do damage, but it's spread out because of how long the combo is. Because I think Goku would have a push from Bandai, he's more of a melee-focused character, but he still has plenty of ranged options. His Ki Blast has a slow rate of fire, but is generally precise and has infinite range. It does below average damage, but not low damage. His first ability is Instant Transmission. It has a quick cooldown and lets him teleport to any ally on the map. This would let him get back from spawn faster if a teammate is still alive, or it'd let him jump in to help an ally diving the enemy team, and then jump back out by teleporting to an ally on point. Which is the part I would actually like to try if I could play this character. His second ability is making himself into a wall using Kaioken. Goku spreads his body wide and becomes immovable, sort of like when Piccolo saved Gohan from Nappa. While this ability is active, Goku takes no outside damage, but the Kaioken slowly drains his health. If your healer's on you though, they should be able to mitigate that as you block incoming attacks. His third ability is the Kamehameha, of course. Like the previous ability, he activates Kaioken to become invulnerable to outside damage, but slowly loses health as his attack charges. This attack will take a while to charge up, giving the enemy time to move out of the way. Goku then fires a huge blast that inflicts piercing damage if the enemy doesn't run. By the way, if you hear me say piercing damage, I mean an attack that passes through targets, so it can hit multiple people at once. Goku's passive is the ability to deflect Ki, as I mentioned earlier, and his ultimate is to transform into a Super Saiyan. Since this is a Dragon Ball game, there are a lot of ultimates that are just temporary transformations. While Goku is transformed, he gets a defense boost and all of his cooldowns are shortened. And as an added bonus, when he uses his second or third ability, he no longer uses Kaioken. Now he becomes a Super Saiyan 3 and doesn't take damage over time. Had to fit in the coolest form somehow. Overall, I think Z Goku would be a fun character to play, but obviously that's just a guess. I don't know, maybe he would have some game-breaking balancing issue I can't see without the ability to actually test any of this. Sigh. That's a disclaimer for everything here, by the way. Next, I'll jump to GT Goku. I trimmed out as many repeat characters as I could, but I don't see a way around this one. Super Goku could be made into a skin for Z Goku. The ultimate would become Super Saiyan Blue instead of regular Super Saiyan, and the two abilities would use Blue Kaioken instead of Super Saiyan 3. I'm sure Bandai could make some money off a premium skin like that, but I think the only way to get Super Saiyan 4 is with a second Goku character, and you can't have GT rep without Super Saiyan 4. GT Goku would be a damage character, and the basic idea would be you need to stay at range until you build up your ult to go Super Saiyan 4 and wreck shop. Balancing wise, I'd say GT Goku would be underpowered in his base form, but Bandai branding wise, he might just be good and then busted when he transforms. I imagine his melee attack being something difficult to use since it's Goku adjusting to his kid body again. It would involve a lot of jumping around like Yoda fighting in the prequels. It would be easy to overshoot the jump and miss an attack. But this Goku is supposed to be played at range anyways. So his basic Ki Blast would be a string of 5 normal Ki Blasts, then a Kamehameha to finish it off. The first 5 wouldn't do much damage, but getting that 6th shot would be where you're able to put the hurt on bad guys. Having a Kamehameha as part of the basic is also kind of a joke on how much GT relied on Ki Blasts, and Goku would solve problems with the Kamehameha at the end of an episode. His first ability is a running Kamehameha, a movement ability that can also be used to attack. His second ability is a straight dash as an invulnerable Super Saiyan 3. It doesn't cause damage, but will move people out of the way as an emergency escape. And his third ability is a mini ultimate. It's high risk, high reward, because it would be finicky to land and can only be done at super close range. But it's a Dragon Fist uppercut. Does as much damage as a Dragon Fist should, if you landed it, that is. It also consumes most of your ki gauge to use on top of an insanely long cooldown time. His passive is called Small But Strong. He gets a tiny attack and speed buff that increases as his health decreases. Like I mentioned earlier, his ultimate is Super Saiyan 4. All stats go up, your health becomes larger than a tank's, and you can extend the transformation by getting 4 kills in the form. If that happens, your aura will change to reflect the full power variant of Super Saiyan 4. And for added reference, if you use the Dragon Fist while transformed, you'll fire a Kamehameha first. If you hit an enemy, you'll teleport to them and perform the rest of the attack. Now for a support that needed to be in the game, but which might be a surprise pick. Bulma. Her basic skin would reflect original Dragon Ball Bulma, specifically that one cover art, but she'd probably have skins for her older appearances too. In a way, she'd be the most standard character for a hero shooter because she'll have an actual gun. Her melee is just an attack with the butt of the gun, and the Ki Blast would be firing the assault rifle. It wouldn't do much against Dragon Ball characters, but it might help shoot down those flying guys. Her first ability is spawning a repair device from a capsule. It would be a stationary object that heals allies in a certain radius. It would have its own health and could be destroyed by enemies. It's basically that med droid from Battlefront 2, the good one. Her second ability is the same idea, but instead of healing allies, it boosts their damage a little. Her third ability follows the same pattern, but she'd spawn a motorcycle to give herself a speed boost. It could also shield her from some damage. My idea here is basically Bulma throwing down repair devices and running away. If the devices get destroyed, she rides the bike until the cooldown is up and spawns a new one. You always have to have at least one character for those people bad at the game. Her passive ability reveals the location of enemies that damage her. I imagine this as a young Bulma either crying that she got hurt or yelling, "How dare you!" And her ultimate would be fun. She'd use the Blutzwave device from GT to call Great Ape Goku for help. It would have a slow charge time, but then you would have a giant monkey guarding an area for you. I'm not sure if you'd switch perspective to play as the big monkey, or if it would be an automated thing. And the Great Ape that you call could change depending on the skin you're using. An older Bulma would summon Great Ape Vegeta, and specifically GT Bulma would summon Great Ape Baby. Next up is our Vegeta for the game, specifically Super Saiyan 2 Angel Vegeta from the Buu arc. He would be a tank because I always think about the beating he took from Kid Buu and how hard he tried to fend him off. Wanting to pair him well with Z Goku, Vegeta would be a dive tank. His melee combo would be an endless combo with a pull effect on low health targets like supports and a pushing effect against higher health targets like tanks. This would allow him to split up the enemy and target key picks like the healers, which shows Vegeta's more tactical side. His Ki Blast would be rapid fire and hit a wide area, kind of like a shotgun, but it's not all fired at once. His first ability shoots a barrage of Ki Blasts over a wide area which deals damage and leaves behind a smoke screen. His second ability is the dive. Vegeta jumps in with a ki blast overhead. When he lands, it'll set off an explosion around him. Then his passive is a guts ability. It has an extremely long cooldown, but if he dies, he will instantly get half his health back. It'd be interesting to see a dive with a revive. Lastly is his ultimate ability, the Big Bang attack. It doesn't do much damage for an ultimate, but it hits a wide area and leaves a slow effect behind. I imagine this is what you do before the dive into the enemy team. Do a little damage and slow them when they're grouped, then jump in and get some picks. On to the 5th of 6 for this part. Now we have Dende. He seemed like the obvious pick for a healer, and takes the role of easy but strong heals, kind of like a Mercy. This would be his older appearance from the Buu Saga onwards, and his melee would be whacking someone with that staff of his. So while it doesn't hurt much, it has good range for a melee. He has 2 variations of his Ki Blast, which means he has that 4th ability for switching between them. Version 1 is a translucent beam that provides healing to allies. In function, this would be like Jeff the Landshark's regular heal, but without the arching and less range. In reference, this is like every DBZ movie where they had to give Goku their energy in a last-ditch attempt to stop Broly in one punch. The second variation is a single fast Ki Blast. It can damage enemies or heal allies depending on who it hits, like Anna's sniper rifle. His first ability is a close-range burst heal, like how he healed the Z fighters on Namek. His second ability is a reference to the baby arc in GT. Dende throws Sacred Water onto an ally in short range, removing any debuffs from them. He doesn't have a third ability, but he does have that 4th ability because I made all the 4th abilities the same thing. His passive is a self-heal. All supports get this as their class ability, so Dende's is just a better version of that. I'm pretty sure they did the same thing in Overwatch 2 with Mercy. And his ultimate is something fun because he gets to summon Shinron. Depending on which button you press, you'll either do the old Mercy ult, which is a team res, or you'll fully heal your teammates and provide a temporary damage buff to them. Lastly, the weirdest character I wanted to make for this. I should say that the goal for all characters was not to make them good or viable. I also wanted to appeal to that weird and jokey side of Dragon Ball. I did that in smaller cases like GT Goku getting a boost in Super Saiyan 4 by getting 4 kills. This one is taking it to the extreme, and I decided to do it for Frieza of all characters. Because I do already have 2 Goku characters, the possibilities open for more duplicate characters, and that's what I imagine would happen here. This is specifically Frieza from the original arc, so we'd probably get a Frieza that can turn golden, and would most likely be inspired by his appearance in Tournament of Power. Here, his main gimmick is that you need to build up Frieza's power across the different forms, which also means that switching off of Frieza will mean that you've wasted all your time trying to build him up. In his first form, he floats in his weird chair and does a spin attack with his tail that has a very small knockback effect to try and protect himself from melee characters. His Ki Blast is the Death Beam. It's a precise, long-range attack that does slightly above average damage. Basically, his first form is a weak sniper with no scope. Frieza gets 1 ability in this form, and like GT Goku, he gets a mini ultimate. It's a slow charging supernova. It'll do a lot of damage to a large area if it fires. While the mini ult charges, Frieza is a sitting space duck. However, the supernova itself will protect him from attacks above him, as a reference to Bardock, the father of Goku. His passive in this form is that he does not have a flight gauge and is capable of flying in perpetuity, thanks to his chair. The downside is that his ascent and descent are slower than other characters. His actual ultimate will transform him into his second form, where Frieza switches from a sniper to a bruiser. Unlike other characters, when Frieza transforms, it's permanent. Even if he dies and respawns, he will stay in the same form. However, if you switch to another character and switch back to Frieza, then you will start over as first form. His second form has more health than the previous form, and his melee combo has more range than most melee attacks. He does a long combo where the second and final hits in the string do the most damage. His Ki Blast is an AoE around himself. He has 2 abilities, but the first is just the Death Beam from the first form. It doesn't have a cooldown, but it does consume the Ki gauge to use. His second ability is a rush attack. If you collide with an enemy, you'll stop and knock them into the air like a bolt. His passive in this form reduces damage received by melee attacks. and obviously his ultimate turns him into his third form, who switches back to being more of a ranged attacker. The third form's melee is a flurry of rapid jabs with less range than second form. The third hit in the combo does the most damage. His Ki Blast is once again the Death Beam, and his first ability is the Death Beam Barrage, which consumes Ki over time as you relentlessly fire Death Beams. It was difficult to figure out a second ability since this form only stuck around for one chapter, but his second ability is a counter. He enters a stance where he's able to deflect any Ki attack, because he did that to Gohan's Ki Blast once. His passive ability boosts his Ki attacks and gives them a piercing effect. It also gives him a small speed boost. You'll never guess the ultimate though. His final form has high health and a lot of Ki. His melee is a long combo where the fourth and final hits do the most damage. His Ki attack is still the Death Beam. He gets a second variation on his Ki Blast though, the Death Saucer, which will of course be problematic. Not only can the two discs do piercing damage, they can damage your allies as well as your enemies. That's why it's just an alternative for the Ki Blast. If you're using it, you're probably trolling. His first ability is the Death Wave, a vertical Ki wave with piercing damage, and which requires Ki to use. His second ability is the Nova Strike, a long-range charge in a straight line where you push enemies and allies out of your way. Only the enemies take damage, however. His third ability is similar to the Supernova from the first form, but the attack itself is smaller because it's the Death Ball. He has ability 4 to switch Ki Blast as well. His passive ability boosts his next attack after he lands a killing blow, and his every fourth attack inflicts a slowing debuff onto the target. And finally, his last ultimate ability is Full Power Frieza. Unlike the others, this is not a permanent change, but it does last until you respawn. While in full power, you take less damage from all attacks and resist crowd control abilities, basically becoming a tank on top of being a damage character. Okay, that was already a lot, so I'm stopping here for now. Why is this so long? When did this happen? This is why I split up, but it's supposed to be shorter than this.